3, 2, 1.
Don't forget to tag me, old chap.
I got you.
Okie dokie. Aha. I think now we're up and running. Is anybody there? Can anybody see me? I'm looking at my comments. As soon as somebody talks to me, I'll get going. So who's going to be the first to comment on this premiere video of the IAM Approach? Looks like I'm the only one on it at the moment. Ah, Make a Pathway Louise is watching. That's good. Ria, my darling, how are you? Laura, nice to see you. So here we go. We're up and running. And if somebody would like to write a comment so that I can actually see the comments as we go along, that would be nice. Marina, thank you for everything, Marina. Nice to see you. Todd Medina. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start. Nobody's made a comment yet. Well, I'm going to put my presentation up and just talk through it. So let me go here. The host disabled participant screen sharing. Host, if you could help me to share my screen, that would awfully be nice. Aha, there we go. Everything's looking good. So here we are, everybody, and welcome to the premiere of the IAM Approach to Health and Wellbeing, session 1. And this is basically the introduction to what we'll be doing in the next 11 sessions after this one. And thank you, Marina. Wonderful to see you too. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a few slides and just explain what's coming up over the next 11 sessions. The sessions will be once every fortnight and they'll go on for about an hour. And then what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and find out how to see your comments just on the side here. I'll practice that. And as they come up, I'll try and answer the comments as we go along. But this is the IAM approach. And people have been saying to me, well, what does this IAM approach mean? Well, it's really about that thing there in the top left-hand corner. IAM, as most of us know at Soulogy anyway, is the IAM presence really is the source energy, the energy from the start of creation itself, and the energy that really drives us forward in our evolutionary process. And I'll explain what the IAM means as I go further forward. But in human terms, it's also about this thing as well here. And this is called the caduceus. And the caduceus, as many of you will know from yoga and such like, the caduceus is two intertwined serpents that sort of are intertwined against a central axis. And what I've done is over the last 35 years, I've been trying to marry Eastern philosophies and Western philosophies. And I think I'm doing quite a good job of it, really, because throughout the IAM approach, what I'll do is I'll actually show the Eastern philosophies in the terms of chakras, but I'll also link it up with what's called the autonomic nervous system. And I will break it down into reasonably understandable chunks. So just to show you here, the symbology of this, it's a very ancient symbol. It comes from before Greece, actually, and before Hippocrates, and it comes from before ancient Egypt as well. But the symbology is that this is where the root chakra, when we're born here, and that then activates the root chakra. And there's only one way into the root chakra. And then from there, as we evolve, we actually move up then to the sacral chakra. And if we're all balanced, then we easily move up then into the solar plexus chakra. So the first chakra, the root chakra, is the individual person. Then we move out then and we meet somebody else. And then we move up into the third chakra, the solar plexus chakra, which is to do with society. And then what tends to happen then is if we move up then and we understand then we stop looking outwards for external rewards and we start to look inwards to see what our soul's purpose is. And this, I feel, is what's happening across the planet at the moment. And then we move up then and we express ourselves in the throat chakra. And then we move further up then, and all sorts of gifts come online as we hit the pituitary gland and the brow chakra. And then as we move further up then, everything unifies in the crown chakra and off we go. And if we've learnt all the lessons, we don't have to come back because karma is sorted. We're off the wheel of karma. We've gained our wings and we've done a jolly good job. But that probably takes quite a few lives on earth just to experience the full spectrum. And so if we don't do that, we can come back again and we can pick the bits that we've missed out and we can start again to fill in the blanks there. So that's what I'm going to try and talk about. So that's really my understanding of how yoga works as well. And it's basically through breath and through positive emotion, and we can realign the chakras and we can allow this ascension, if you like, through all these chakras until we reach what's so-called cosmic consciousness or enlightenment. So that's what that's about. But just to bring it straight back to earth again, more than anything else, it's called the I Am Approach to Health and Wellbeing, because we'll be working with this really. And this is a very simple diagram. Can I just ask, can everybody hear what I'm saying and see the screen clearly? If someone can just say, yep, clear or something like that, rather than me going on.
Yes, clear.
Oh,
You're clear.
thank you. But that was like, thank you, God.
I am the wizard.
No, I am that I am. That's the whole thing goes. I am the I am approach. So just to go back to my journey for very many reasons and not to bore you to death with it, really, I became very unwell, both psychologically and physically. And I was on my last legs, really. And at that point, I tried to do myself in because I'd been going downhill and destroying myself for a long time. And at that point of sort of leaving, a strange thing happened to me. It was almost like the peace that passeth all understanding descended upon me. And just for a split second, I understood everything. In fact, I even saw a sort of cipher, as the Americans would call it. And I understood how everything worked, you know. And then in that peace that passeth all understanding, I got the feeling was I'd sort of signed up for this and that I was to be turned around, kicked up the bottom and shown step by step how to come back up. Through struggling and through sort of understanding different tests, different initiations and things like that, I started to move up, sometimes falling backwards, but then carrying on. And then it got to a place where I could cope well with life and I was achieving some reasonable success, but there were still bits and pieces that need sorted out. And I reckon I'm in this bit here now, not perfectly 100% healthy, but much, much better. At this day, on this day today, I feel really clear-minded. I feel really strong, and that may well be something to do with the Sirius connection, because I seem to be connected with Sirius C for some reason, and also it's Lionsgate Day today, and that to me is the infinity symbol, and I'm just going to talk about that as we go further on. So this is what the I Am approach is. What we'll do in this session is I'll tell you who I am and what qualifications I've got, and if you like, what gives me the right to talk about these things. And then we'll talk about what exactly is the I Am approach and what's coming up in the next few weeks. And then I'm going to get you to send in some information on a little sort of link to say what you actually want from the course once I've explained it. And then we'll look at in more detail today's session. We'll look at the heart-brain, body-mind connection. And then if we've got time, then I'll do a quick guided breathing technique and sort of field any questions. So that's what's coming up. And by all means, if you want to put comments or ask questions as I'm going along, what I'm doing is I'm just looking at my phone and I can see the comments and stuff. So I'll try and sort of look at the phone as I go along, really. So the I Am approach, what does I Am stand for? Well, the I Am is the eternal presence, really. It's the I am that I am, and it's talked about in lots of spiritual circles. And to me, it's representative of cosmic consciousness. It's representative of source creator energy that we can all tap into and be guided from. And that's really what the I Am approach is. It's not to listen to external experts but it's really to take our head and our eyes, turn it the other way around, and to sort of come out of our heads and back into our hearts, where the true guidance comes from. And I think more and more people are beginning to feel that maybe we're living in a sort of upside down, inside out world, and maybe we need to turn the other way around and start looking within, you know. And people call this being restored to sanity. They call it the self-actualization, the journey towards self-actualization and self-mastery, or really the journey back to sovereignty. So that's what the I Am approach is about. And it's interior asset management, because it focuses on what's strong in the individual and not what's wrong with the individual. And in the society that we live in today, really, we tend to focus on what people aren't good at, and we tend to try and get them to become better at stuff that they're not naturally inclined towards. Well, the I Am approach it's a strength-based, asset-based approach that focuses on what people are naturally inclined towards, what gives them joy and vitality, and it helps them to take more and more steps in the direction of joyfulness, and rather a deficit model, which keeps working with stuff that they're not naturally good at, and they're miserable at these things when they're doing them. So my understanding is that each individual person will have a set of assets or skills, right, with which they can, go forward and lead their life. And if they're no good at certain things, then there'll be somebody else in the team or the community who will be good at that. So it's really sharing individual, unique resources in community to make the world a better place. I can feel a song coming on. And so it's also deliberately developmental, because more than anything else, and this is what I found, is it's about facing our fears. It's about applying for the courage to actually go through our fears, because every time we take an action against what we're afraid of, and these are mostly programs from childhood, then what actually happens is every time we walk through the fence rather than going round it, then the energy that's been keeping the defenses in place is reinfused back into our individual vitality, which gives us more strength, more courage, more joy, and a better quality of life. So really, that's why it's deliberately developmental. It's an evolutionary model. It's based on mindfulness. And what mindfulness is, for anybody who doesn't know, it's not quite meditation. It's more of a state, really, of objectivity. So we're able that when we feel any trigger or any stress-related emotional reaction, rather than automatically going forward and reacting, we can actually take a step back, breathe in a certain way, gain more space from our subjectivity or our egocentricity, and we can see more clearly then the action that needs to be taken next. And it's a stress re-education program, because most of us, whether we know it or not, we've been actually fear conditioned, and we're very, very emotionally reactive and on the defensive. So this is all about learning. How can we tell when we're stressed? Well, we can tell when we're stressed when we feel tense. How can we then use simple breathing exercises and positive emotion to gain some space where we can calm down, our mind expands, we get a whole different menu of options that we can choose from, and then we can choose the one that we feel that will give us more joy and more energy and more enthusiasm and more vitality. So that's why it's deliberately developmental, it's evolutionary, and it helps us to grow both emotionally and also mentally as well. And it's obviously a fusion of ancient wisdom, because the stuff that I'm sort of churning out is not mine. I haven't, oh, excuse me one sec. I'll just have to decline that. I'm going to have to answer that phone. That's the home that my mum's in. Just bear with me 1 second.
No problem.
Okay, thanks, mate. Yep. Oh dear.
Our options have now changed. Know the extent number of the person you are trying to reach. Please enter it now. Alternatively, press 1 for the messaging card. Press 2 for further availability. Linda speaking.
Hello, Linda. It's Joe Delaney. It's okay. What's up?
A little faint at lunchtime. He's soon recovered and he's had a tea and he's been all right. Just the one that he sometimes has like a little bit of a face, really. That was all.
Oh no, that's great, Linda. Thanks very much. So I don't need to come in or anything like that.
I couldn't find Mary's number because I thought maybe now we were probably ringing Mary, but actually it's been crossed out from when she was away and there's nothing back in here. So if we want to be personally ring, you have to get over and back again.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, keep me on the list. It would be better. Oh no, look, thanks very much, Linda. Okay, bye. Bye. Right, that's fine. My mum's fine. She's had a funny turn in the home. So just bear with me now while I just go back to where we were from before. And there we go. Diddly-bum, dum, 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 dum. And I'll go back on here. Now, typical, isn't it, really? So I'm back now. Can somebody say that you can hear me and it's okay to carry on forward? Would that be possible? Just a thumbs up or something like that would be good.
Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. I love that voice from God. Thanks very much, Todd. Yeah, so it's a fusion of ancient wisdom and modern knowledge. So as I say, I've not swiped this from anybody. I've just read stuff for a long time now, put it in my own words, and tried to combine ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience, really, to give it some sort of credibility with more people. And it's essentially about how we manage time and how we manage our energy. And it's so easy in this day and age now to be distracted away and waste our energy really on things that aren't purposeful. So we'll be talking about that as we go along. And how can you tell that you're wasting your energy? You just don't feel very good. So that's what that's about. It's holistic. So that means it combines everything. And when we get it all balanced, it's wholesome. So there'll be a nutritional component. It's wholehearted. So we'll feel like we can throw ourselves wholeheartedly into life with purpose. And it's a whole person approach to whole health. Bit corny that, but I like it. So it's about this really. It's about, we'll look at the 4 quadrants of what it is to be a full human being. So I've called these intelligences really. So physical quotient or physical intelligence. We'll look at the emotional component and we'll spend quite a bit of time on that one really. And how can we handle negative emotions? We'll look at the IQ and intellectuality, because often what we know blocks us from what we need to know. And this is when we move from instinct and intellect. We move in then to intuition and inspiration. And when all those components are balanced and working coherently, then we become a whole person then, and we understand fully why we're here, and we can go on and do good works in the future. But the whole thing about it is it's a dynamic process. It's always ongoing, and there's always something different to do every single day. And just while it's in my mind here, what I've learned is that we almost have to face our fears in the order that they were laid down, right? And I think sometimes we can receive advice from external sources and they tell us to do one thing and it can actually obstruct our progress or our evolution. So what I'm saying is that if we can tune into our intuition and ask our intuition through inspiration to guide us, we've got a much better chance of being on what you call a fast track to ascension. And so we work from this dimension. We'll start off with intuition and the spiritual component. That will then move then through our emotions. So we'll be able to tell through our feelings what to do next, really. And when we're in a cool, calm and collected state, then we can use our mind then in the way that it's supposed to be used. We can make the right choices and then we can put them into action in the physical. So it's actually working exactly the wrong way around. And just to say, these are the references that I've used for the course. There's 4 pages of basically neuroscience information here. So if anybody's into these, then at the end of it, I can give you a list of all these references and you can go and look for them yourself. Because I really don't want you to believe a single word I say, but if it rings true with you, or you know something's triggered, by all means, please go and make your own research and look a bit deeper. And by all means, I've got no problem being challenged in anything that I say, because I'm only really interested in living in the truth, right? And not, you know, some sort of delusion. So this is who I am, or who am I, right? I'm a consultant principal lecturer in integrative health and medicine. And this is now, it's called lifestyle medicine now in the UK. So it depended on my audience, I changed this title. But I'm not a doctor of medicine in that I don't prescribe medications. I've actually got a PhD in medicine, which looked at how psychological stress impacts upon the heart. And I'll just explain some of the stuff that I learned when I was doing my PhD. I was, for a long time, I was a senior research fellow in medicine at a large university hospital. But in that process, I became the UK's first NHS specialist in integrative health practice. And as far as I know, they haven't had another one of these, and that was a long time ago. I'm dead clever really. You can see from all these things, I'm dead clever. And you know, here's the funny thing is, I don't think I am. You know, I feel like I'm thick most of the time. But I'm a member of the International Society of Autonomic Neuroscience, and that's really the area that I spend most of my time studying. And I'm all these things, and I put these in here just to show that I'm a proper scientist first and foremost. But then it gets into the sort of more what would be called woo-woo science, or you know, fringe science. I'm a member of the International Society for the Study of Subtle Energy Medicines, right? And that's what I'm going to be talking about as we go further into this course. And I'm a member of the International Complexity Network. So I've got some qualifications there, just to sort of back up what I'm talking about. So this is where I became sort of supposedly internationally famous, that when I was doing my PhD, right, and these are my scientific credentials, I found out that our breathing and the way we breathe and the quality of our breathing directly impacts upon the way that the heart works. And this was like amazing to me, because nobody I knew in the whole medical field knew anything about this at all, which I found unbelievable. But these humps here, these humps, they represent heart power or heart flexibility, or if you like, vitality. So you can see that at 12 breaths per minute, there's a bit of a hump there. However, if we slow our breathing down just by 3 breaths per minute, you can see that the hump goes up. These are very technical words that I'm using. But the magic happens, and this is the amazing thing, at 6 breaths per minute, what actually happens is there's an exponential rise in heart power. And that really is quite significant, because what happens then is, this is the access point to what's called the 0 point. It's when the two sides of our autonomic nervous system start to cooperate with one another perfectly. And it's in that point there that science has shown that our brain waves change, and we go into what's called, and I'll talk about this more as we go along, we go from basically a beta brainwave state into an alpha theta state. And that would be a point of perfect balance, where it seems to open up intuition and inspiration. So by breathing at 6 breaths per minute, and by using a positive emotion, we can actually change the way our heart operates. It becomes more and more coherent. Our thinking expands, and our consciousness changes as well to a more positive change. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, really. And that's in the Physiological Society. And the Physiological Society is the oldest scientific society in the world. So, you know, I do have some credibility, although I never feel like I do. So basically, what we're going to show you in the course is how you can break into the way that your heart works through breathing, change the way the heart's coherence works, change the way the brain works, and then that gives us the ability to make clearer choices then, so we can go forward, and our intuition will guide us then onto what actions we need to take. So it's rather than relying on external sources of information, not that I'm saying change your mind and you know, don't listen to everything, right? Because sometimes you can glean information from the inside, but to use the words I use, I take all the information that I hear or see or read, I allow it to sit in my heart. And then it's almost like I allow my intuition then to send up the information to me in the present moment to guide me as to which action to take then. So it's acting upon information received. And this is so important. But it's discerning then. It's discerning whether the information is true for us or is being fed to us from external sources. How can we tell? Because true information, right, gives us an opening feeling. It's attached with vitality. It's attached to joyfulness, and that's hopefully what we're going to show you in the course, how to tap into that quickly. So really, the world operates on head first and normally sends information which impacts upon the heart. So this is not anything to do with being against cognitive behavioral therapy, not at all. But this is actually showing how we can change the way the heart works to change the way the head works to make healthier and more expanded choices. So it's hacking physiology to change psychology and not the other way around. So we've turned the world upside down and we're working from a different way. Just to say, is this readily accepted in the medical fraternity? Of course not. But to give some hope, more and more people are understanding the science of this now. And so that's why I'm trying to lead with science rather than any of the other stuff that I'm interested in, because as soon as I mention things like spirituality, something closes down on them and the information stops being transferred. So I'm trying to bring it in a subtle way. So people ask me, what is it that you do? And I say, well, I'm a consultant in psycho, neuro, endocrino, immunohematology. And then they generally don't ask me anything after that. But just to say, here's a cut down version of that. Psycho, this is, I've been called psycho quite a lot, but this is to do with the area of the mind. And it's how we receive information into the central nervous system or the brain. And then how that information then is processed. So the P stands for process. It also stands for perception, how we see the world. And I quite like the phrases, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. So the information that comes into here through the processing will then send information to our nervous system. So the nervous system is like the electrical system of the body. The information directly that's sent from our perceptual mechanisms down the nerves will then send information to our 7 major endocrine glands. So there'll be chemical substances secreted to the degree of the processing. So this is the processing. These are the signals, sends information to our glands, and they're secreted then into our blood system. And that changes the way our immunology, our immune system works. And just to say here is, if we perceive something as being stressful or fearful, it will send a defensive message here. This will push out all sorts of defensive hormones like adrenaline and all sorts of other toxic hormones, and our immune system will be overworked then. So this is something I'm going to really concentrate on, is how can we change the way that our heart works to improve the function of our immune systems. And so I'm going to be spending quite a lot of time on perceptual mechanisms and the nervous system as well, and how we can change that quite easily. Now, we can change it easily, but it needs to be practiced in order to develop new neural pathways. So this is what happens really. We bring in information into our sensory system, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. So they're the 5 senses. But we've also got information that's coming in our 6th sense, which is really how we process thought. So that information then is sent to our perceptual centers. And then we then log back into our memory then to see if we can recognize or remember what's actually going on. And most of us, that's how we live our lives. We live on these programmed sort of automaton systems where we pattern match and immediately we take an action based upon previous past events. I honestly believe that the way forward is if we can get into mindfulness and we can almost bypass the memory step and live beyond memory, then we're living in a completely new world, a completely blank sheet. And if we keep listening to our heart, then That will provide us beyond memory with the information that we need to take decisions, to take actions, and to go forward. But I know I'm sort of whizzing through this quite quickly because I want to sort of give you a flavor of what's actually coming up in the future. So now I don't know whether this is going to work. In fact, I'm not going to do this, but no, I will do. I will do. If you've got your phone ready, just sort of just log on to that there. And I'll look at this later. Hang on, what have I done? Just let me, I'll do a new share here. I'll stop that share just for a second. Okay. And I'll put the screen up. And what you can do on this screen, I don't know whether you'll see that. Are you there, God? Can you see that screen, God? Yes. What you do is you click on that plus at the bottom there. And I just want to ask you, just sit and think quietly and just think, what do you want from this course? You personally, you don't have to put any personal information in, but what exactly would you like to learn from this? Because if you give me some indication, I can almost like tailor the rest of the weeks to try and cover everybody's, you know, bits and pieces really. So there should be stuff coming up on there. Who wants to go first? Maybe that's not working. Let me see if I can write one. Okay, I'm going to stop that because that, for some reason, that doesn't seem to be working. But anyway, the whole point is if you can log on to that, or maybe if you give me some indications of what you'd like to sort of get from the course, I'll tailor it towards towards what you want. So I'm going to stop that share. And then I'm going to go back to my my other screen now. I go to here. So that was that one. That's back on the screen. And there we go. I much prefer to do this face-to-face in rooms with people. But this is what we're going to be concentrating on then, really. And I'll try and explain this slowly because it's the science of it. But really, I spent a long, long time analyzing thousands of ECGs or EKGs and working out really the information that was coming from this heart signal here. So what actually happens is information comes into our central nervous system. That's our brain. So we're receiving information from our senses, and this processing center in the brain is trying to make sense of it. So it will log back into memory. It will try and decode it, and it will come up with a signal that it will send down these two wires here. And these two wires are what's called, these are components of the autonomic nervous system. And one's a brake. This is a brake. And that's all to do with rest and digest. And this is the accelerator, which is to do with fight and flight. So if we perceive a threat here, then it will obviously send information here, and the accelerator goes on. And then it will send a particular pattern here to our heart, which represents this jaggedy, incoherent pattern at the level of the heart. Now, most people don't know this. This is not the ECG. This is the beat-to-beat interaction of the heart. So by clever analysis, we can take all these interactions and we can backtrack and see where the information's coming from. Anyway, I'm becoming a bit too sort of complicated there, but the idea is what then happens is the information from the heart is sent back to the head then. And if we're still in fear, it will just keep going in this perpetual loop. So I'm going to show you throughout the course of this course how to nip that in the bud, restore balance, make better choices. And so the way that we can do that is we focus on our breathing, as I've already mentioned, and we can focus on other influences. And the other influences are our emotional state, how we feel. And what we can do is we can breathe in a certain way at 6 breaths per minute or thereabouts, and we can bring in a positive emotion, and we can almost imagine that we're breathing this positive emotion into our hearts and out through our hearts as well. And what science has clearly shown now, and there's no sort of controversy over this anymore, is that what we do is we tend to then become much better at using the brake, less harsh on the brake and much less harsh on the accelerator then. So it's a bit like driving a car. In stress and tension, we drive in a very jaggedy way and we burn everything out quickly. But if we can use positive emotion and breathing at 6 breaths per minute, then we can actually change the way the heart works to a much more coherent pattern. And that's the most important thing. And I use a piece of equipment that I'll bring over actually to the Soulogy conference. I'll put people on it. It's part of the lie detector test, because what you do is you ask a person a certain thing. The brain is that sensitive, it picks it up, it sends information down, and we get a jaggedy signal. So that's an indication that they're lying, right? But if it stays coherent like this, they've either learned how to get over the lie detector test or they're telling the truth. But here's the most important thing is the information from a coherent heart then sends information back to the central nervous system and the brain waves. The brain waves calm down. We go into the neutral 0 point. Our intuition and inspiration opens up, and then you can almost like have a conversation or develop a dialogue then with your intuition or your core or your soul or whatever terminology you want to use, right? And it will almost like give you a menu of options where you can go forward then. So that's the neuroscience of it, and I'll try and bring in some psychology as we go further along. But, you know, so we've got that in us, and don't get me wrong, I mean, sometimes we need this to get ourselves out of danger. So this would be the sympathetic nervous system or the accelerator. And that's where most of us are on all the time. We're switched on all the time, and we don't know how to truly relax. And I relaxed by getting as much alcohol down me. That was my way of medicating me into relaxation and oblivion. And obviously it nearly saw me off in the end. But really, there are natural ways to get into that. So we don't want too much of that one, and we don't want too much of this one. What we really need is something in the middle. Relaxed alertness. You know, when our minds are sharp, but our body's relaxed as well. And really, the only time that the body should be tense, right, is when we're defending ourselves in immediate physical danger. Other than that, right, we should be in a relaxed and alert state and be able to think clearly. So that's the whole plan, really. And there we'd be in a point of optimal arousal or perfect balance. So we don't want too much break, because if there's too much break on, we tend to overeat. We can't get motivated. We can become bored. You can be burnt out and bored, and that can lead to depression. If there's too much accelerator, we can be driven, we can be forceful, but that sometimes brings anxiety with it as well. And there's almost like a sort of link here that anxious people tend to project into the future, you know, because, you know, you can't really be anxious about something that's already happened. You can be anxious about if it catches up with you. But if you're an anxious person, it means that one side of your head is more prominent than the other. And that's something that I'm going to talk about. But if you tend to be an angry person or depressed, it's because you're looking backwards as well. So people who are resentful or angry or depressed tend to be looking backwards, and people who are anxious tend to be looking forwards. So what we really need to do is bring these two together to help people to live in the now moment, as it's often called. So stress is a problem. Next week, we'll give you a stress questionnaire. I'm going to work out with Todd how we can get that out, but that might be useful. I just want you to say, you know, have a look at this drawing and just say to yourself which way she's turning, right? So just look at it now. And what generally happens is, I mean, I don't know whether you can put this up on the comments, but is she turning clockwise or anti-clockwise? Excuse me. No one's saying anything at the moment, but if she's turning clockwise, It means, oh, there we are. Thanks very much, Ria. Clockwise. So if she's turning clockwise, you are a right brain processor, and I'll explain what this means. If she's turning anti-clockwise, then that means you're a left brain processor. Now, if sometimes people will say she's changing, I swear to you, right, she's not changing, right? And then we get into the pantomime. Oh, yes, she is. Oh, no, she isn't. So looking at the comments, there are people who can see her going one way and people can see her going the other way all at the same time. And let me try and explain what's happening is it all depends on how you process information in your brain. So the light's coming in the form of photons. It's hitting our retinas. At the retinas, then, that's processing that information regarding frequencies. The frequencies are being picked up and sent via our optic nerve to the back of our heads. This is called the occipital cortex. Now, depending on whether that signal goes to your right hemisphere or your left hemisphere will determine the way that this dancer is going. And that's why different people in the same circumstances can see things in a different way. And so really, this is about perception, how to make sure that we're perceiving the world clearly and how to make choices based upon clear perception. So I will go over that as we go on further. But this will wreck your head, this next one, really. If you keep your eyes focused on the middle one, and just keep your head straight, but turn your eyes to the left-hand side and you should be able to see that one turning clockwise. And then if you look to the right, then that should be turning anti-clockwise. And if you get really good at this, when you look back to the middle, she should go one way, then the other, then the other. And in that state, that will be a point of neutrality. It would be the 0 point where your hemispheres were working in harmony with one another. Now, here's the miracle. If your heart is working coherently, then your head will be working coherently and you should be able to see it alternate between clockwise and anti-clockwise. And therefore, you're being able then to see both sides of the situation. Now, in stress, though, what we tend to do is we tend to default to the coping strategies that we learned as children. And that's why if you're married to somebody who's a right brain processor and you're a left brain processor, that means in stress and in confusing situations, you can never see eye to eye. So this is almost like marriage guidance counseling this. And if we go into heart coherence, what tends to happen is automatically then you can start to see the other person's side. So this has got more and more implications as we go forward. So I'll spend more time on that as we go through the weeks. But nature can be cruel, you know, we can sometimes see things, but once we see both sides of the occasion, things start to make much more sense to us. It can be cruel or it can be kind, or you can get a bigger picture sort of thing. But this is the most important thing now is most of us think that we know what's going on. And this is where I was for years. You know, I had a lot of information on medicine, biomedicine and stuff like that. So I really thought I knew what I was talking about. Right. But I look back now clearly that I didn't have a clue because most of my processing was going on above the surface. And I didn't realize this was the short-term memory or the working mind. Much of the emotional processing and what was driving my choices were actually going on below the level of consciousness. Right, in a world. So, and people say, no, that's not right. And I say, hang on a second. I'm saying below the level of consciousness. So you weren't even aware of it. And that's become true more and more. And I can see now that in order to evolve and go forward, we have to sink deeper and start to accept and change some of the processing that's going on under here. And as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that blocks evolution, there are two things: fear-based responses and pride-based responses. They're really the only two blocks to true progress. And I think in order to get over the fear-based childlike things, we need to face the fears and go forward. And in order to get over the intellectual pride where we think we know what we're talking about, it's to be more humble and really to work on a sort of a mentality is, I'm not quite sure, I need to look deeper into this, and to admit that maybe you don't know what you're talking about, and I couldn't do that. For years I would make up stories and pretend that I knew what I was talking about, and I look back now and it was quite clear that people knew that I didn't know what I was talking about and could see me doing this, so I've learned a lot, really, and I only ever feel like I'm still just scratching the surface of what there is to know about what's going on in the world. So this is important, and just to show how our unconscious can change the way that we perceive the world, I'll just show you this. Here was a chap, I'll get through this, but Einstein, by all accounts, right, when he felt blocked and he didn't feel in the flow, he used to get on his bike, go down to his boat and go sailing in his dinghy, and apparently he had a lot of insightful moments when he was letting his soft out, really, and relaxing. So that's a way to balance the hemispheres so that they work cooperatively, so they work together. It's hard to say that at this time of the day. So the right brain is really associated with the feminine, the left brain, the logical brain, the masculine. They need to work harmoniously together. One's not better than the other. They're just part of the same whole, really. And we need to sort of get, through breathing, away from this accentuated antagonism and get into more coherent sort of cooperation or balance. So if you just look at this here, and in your mind, or you can shout it out if you like, say what you see. And you might want to write this down on the comments, and I'll just give you a bit of time. And this is generally how our unconscious processing really changes the way we see the world, or it influences the way that we see the world, and therefore will influences what happens to the rest of our body then as well. So does anybody want to be brave enough to say what they see? Okay, so good one. Yes, Ria, I knew you'd see that. Have they got any clothes on? No, they haven't, have they? I'll say it for you. A man holding a woman in a passionate embrace, naked, right? Janet, she sees the same thing. A masculine and a feminine, she's put. Now, this might shock you because it's good, this, and it's not rude, this, by the way, but children don't see initially the naked man and woman. What children see is they see 9 dolphins. And normally people go, "Oh, I can't see any dolphins." Lisa, you need help. Lisa Nickel, right? You need help, right? What they see is 9 dolphins. And I had this slide for 6 months before I saw any dolphins. So that just goes to show what my Roman Catholic mind was all about. So here's the first dolphin. There's its tail. Look, 1 dolphin, another dolphin, another dolphin. Boom, 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 boom. Actually, 10 dolphins. And this is a message d'amour les dauphins, right? And that's why, through mindfulness and through the I Am approach, it will give us the courage and the confidence to delve deeper into our emotional processing, to see what programs and what conditioning have really been driving our choices in life. And that's what I'm hoping, is that this course will help you to plug back into this, to realizing and to let go of this faulty programming, or as they say now, the programming and the conditions that no longer serve us, and to be much more free about things. So that's something I'm going to talk about. And this is basically how we do it, and I'll be teaching this as we go along. But we become aware of our breathing. And just very, very simply, the technique is quite simple. That we put our hands on our heart, or you can put your right hand over your heart, and you can put your left hand underneath that, as though you were snuggling a sacred child. I call this cradling the sacred child. So you can put one hand over your heart, one hand on your tummy, on your solar plexus, and you can do like a snuggly feeling. And now the way we bring in a positive emotion is, if we bring in a thought that brings with it a feeling of love and caring and compassion and a lovely feeling. So if you've got a favorite child, bring the picture of the child into your mind that will bring with it the feeling. You can get shut of the child and they've done their work. Stay with the feeling and breathe in the feeling in and out of your heart. And it goes like this. In, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stop. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stop. And the most important thing is you actually feel the feeling as it penetrates your heart. And then as you breathe it out as well. And what this tends to do is as you focus on the feeling first, it will help over time as you practice it for the thoughts to calm down. Now, if there was an evil sort of force that was trying to prevent us from doing this, it would work through your mind. And your mind may say things like, oh, I haven't got time for this. Oh, I can't be bothered. This can't work. It's too simple, blah, 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 blah. I just caution you to not fight with those thoughts, but just breathe them away with the out breath. And you can almost talk to it and say, look, I'm going to give this a try because it will benefit both of us in the end. So my suggestion is that you breathe in and out and do this for 10 minutes, 3 times a day. So if you're a sort of a spirituality type person, you could maybe burn some incense, put on some nice music, relaxing music, breathe in the light. And I'm going to use a mantra here. I hope it's not offensive, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I do that, breathe in the light and breathe out the shite. You know, that means all the rubbish that we've accumulated over time. And as you practice this more and more, right, what tends to happen is your head opens up more. You start having more positive thoughts. You gain more courage. You take the actions to overcome fear. And then you're up and running then on your hero's journey. So that's that, becoming aware of your breathing. And this is basically what's happening in the neuroscience sense, is every time that the heart beats, there's a very slight variation between each heartbeat. And most people think that the heart beats in a very monotonous way, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Even 3 seconds of heart rate data can bring information on how your body's working, really. So what we do is we take, say, 6 minutes of this, and then we almost like reverse engineer it to find out where most of the information's coming from. And then we get an idea then of the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic components of the nervous system. And generally, most people have got too much acceleration and not enough brake. So it's not, the point is that what we want them to do is we want them to work in harmony. And that's why it's so important that your in-breath and your out-breath remain the same length. But if you can breathe in the positive emotion as well, what tends to happen is over time, you tend to kick out all the old programs and renew them with a new, more creative sort of energy. So you're actually developing new habits, new pathways, and feeling much better as well. So that's that there. So we go from there. And then we can look at this as somebody under stress here. There's a lot of variability, but it's too jaggedy, really. So this is 5 minutes of data. And when we do what's called a power calculation or spectral density on it, we can see that there's all sorts of spikes everywhere. And what we really need is, we don't need that. We just need one spike. So here's somebody breathing in that way. They've trained a bit. It's me, this actually. They've trained for quite a while now, and this is how their breathing goes in this nice coherent pattern. And then all the energy then, or the heart power, comes to 1 point there at 0.1 hertz. That's when we open up then to intuition and inspiration. We balance our hemispheres of our brain. The central line comes online, the hara line. And then sometimes we can get feelings, and this is sometimes associated with Kundalini awakening and all those sorts of things. So not only do we change our mind, but because the mind sends signals through our endocrine glands, then we start to change our bodies. And the thing about it is the biochemical secretions will impact upon cell surfaces, and that will be then translated to the signals going in and changing the way that our DNA works as well. So there's loads and loads of different sorts of interrelationships going on here now. And so this is just basically the preliminaries of what's coming up. And so I'm coming out of this now and stopping the share. I don't know how that's gone, and apologies obviously for the interruption just in the middle of it. But what we'll actually be looking at is the 4 quadrants of the I AM approach. So I'll go through the physical stuff first, and we'll talk about nutrition. We'll talk about exercise. We'll talk about movement, and I'll offer you some sort of non-medical intervention advice on what to do and how to become aware of your breathing. If there was going to be one take-home message from this, it is become aware of your breathing, become aware of the way that you feel, and become aware of your energy levels. And the more often that you can become aware of those things start to change automatically then when you go back into this coherent breathing. So I'm just going to sort of, it's actually, that was just an hour with a bit of an interruption, but the sessions will be an hour long, but I'll sort of hang on and I'll find a better way to get people sort of comments and things. But by all means, I'm not going to have time to answer emails or messages or anything like that. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put back up that, you know, that thing with all the dots on it. I can't remember what it's called. Just bear with me again while I put it up and keep talking. Yeah, there it is. So I'll leave it up for a bit. If you just use your camera on your mobile phone, it will take you to that page. And if you just want to put some queries or comments or anything there. And also, I think this is because this is up on Facebook, you might want to be able to think about it and put the comments on this, and I'll have a look at those there. So if anybody wants to make any comments, well, I'll give it another 5 minutes or so. I mean, if it's too complicated, tell me, you know, because I want to try and get this across to as many people as possible. And I know I do have a tendency to, like most sort of medical type people, is to go into jargon and stuff like that, you know. So I just wanted to try and be as sort of not complicated as possible so that I can get the message across to more people. So I'll give it a couple more minutes. And if you click on that, it'll take you to that page there. But as I say, if you can't, thanks very much, Janet. Pleasure, Ria, my love. I hope you're keeping well. We must have one of our chats. Thank you, Victoria. Might want to pop in the link on the... Oh, what a good idea, Delia. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Okay, so I think that's it then. So Todd, sorry, I get mixed up between those two because they're the same to me. I'm going to leave it at that now, and I'm going to sort of try and find a way whereby I can read comments in the Facebook side of things as they appear.
We can work that out.
Yeah, that's fine, mate. Yeah,
we can actually work that out with the broadcast software where you can get all the comments from all the platforms will come up to you.
Oh, great.
I didn't think about that, but we'll incorporate that next week.
Okie doke. So yeah, in a fortnight's time, my next one then. Right. So what I'll do, mate, is I'll get the comments and I'll tailor the next session to try and answer the comments that people put up as well. Right, so thanks very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you got something from it. And more than anything else is breathe in the light, breathe out the shite. And I'll see you next time. And may the force be with you. And happy Lionsgate Day. Bye-bye.